Ladies, today we're going to have an honest, no fluff conversation. This is not about shaming anyone, this is about awakening, because there's a version of you that is poised, respected, and powerful, and then there's the version that unknowingly blocks her own blessings. Let's talk about 6 behavioral signs that are rarely discussed, but can quietly ruin your image, your value, and your quality of life. Let's begin. This conversation is not designed to insult, degrade, or belittle women. In fact, the complete opposite is true. The intention here is to bring to light certain behaviors and mentalities that, while often overlooked or even glamorized, can silently sabotage a woman's self, worth, reputation, and potential. These behaviors aren't discussed often, not because they're insignificant, but because society has learned to normalize them, disguise them under catchy phrases, or overlook them in the name of being unbothered, confident, or independent. But the truth is, there's a clear difference between real empowerment and self-sabotage disguised as freedom. Far too often, women are encouraged to embrace only one side of empowerment, the external side. That is how they look, how desirable they are, what they can get from others, how loudly they can speak up, or how rebellious they can be against traditional norms. While confidence and independence are critical to any woman's development, they become hollow and even destructive when they're built without self-awareness, emotional regulation, and wisdom. We live in a time where public image can be curated to perfection. Social media platforms allow women to present themselves as flawless, high value, and desirable. But what's rarely discussed are the private choices and deeply ingrained habits that contradict that image, those subtle, destructive behaviors that don't make it to Instagram stories or TikTok reels. And unfortunately, when these behaviors go unchecked, they slowly erode a woman's dignity, growth, and ability to command genuine respect. So, when we say signs of a stupid woman, we are not talking about intellectual capacity or formal education. We are referring to behaviors that reflect poor judgment, emotional immaturity, and a lack of self-awareness. Stupidity in this context is the refusal to grow, the repeated choice of low-value behavior when one knows better, or the active rejection of wisdom in favor of short-term validation or social approval. And while stupid may sound like a harsh word, sometimes strong language is required to interrupt deeply rooted patterns. This conversation is here to serve as a mirror, not to shame, but to awaken. To bring attention to the blind spots that might be holding a woman back, not just in her external life, but in her internal state of peace, self-worth, and fulfillment. Because while a woman might gain temporary attention or even financial benefits from certain behaviors, there is always a long-term cost when they're rooted in dysfunction. Let's also recognize that much of what's called empowerment today is often just overcompensation for unresolved wounds. When a woman constantly brags, competes, judges, or seeks attention, this isn't power. It's pain in disguise. True power is subtle, elegant, and calm. It doesn't shout. It doesn't compare. It doesn't chase. A truly empowered woman doesn't need to prove her worth because she knows it. She moves with quiet authority, not loud insecurity, and unfortunately, many women fall into self-destructive patterns because they haven't had spaces where honest feedback is given without judgment. Many have grown up being praised for being cute, attractive, or popular, but never taught how to think critically, reflect emotionally, or build self-control. They were given validation, but not wisdom, compliments, but not character building, and now they carry these patterns into adulthood, often wondering why they're unfulfilled, exhausted, or stuck. This is why conversations like this matter. Because while the world will applaud you for being flashy, rebellious, and overly confident, it will also quietly judge you when those same traits turn toxic, when confidence becomes arrogance, when independence becomes emotional isolation, when beauty becomes the only card you can play. These are not things society will always say to your face, but they are very real consequences that play out in careers, relationships, and mental health. So again, this speech is not an attack, it's a call to higher standards. It's a reminder that femininity and intelligence are not opposites, that grace and strength are not mutually exclusive, that being soft doesn't mean being naive, and that being strong doesn't mean being chaotic or rude. A well-rounded woman knows when to speak and when to stay silent. She knows when to fight and when to walk away. She knows the power of her presence and doesn't need to overcompensate for it with volume or drama. We all have blind spots. We all have things we once did out of immaturity, insecurity, or ignorance. That's part of being human. What separates a woman of wisdom from a woman of poor judgment is the ability to recognize those things and evolve. To admit, I used to be like that, but I've outgrown it. To learn from her mistakes instead of repeating them. To let go of the behaviors that once felt powerful, but were actually rooted in fear or low self-worth. At the end of the day, this is about legacy. What kind of woman do you want to be known as? What energy do you want to bring into rooms, into relationships, into your future family or business? It's not about being perfect, it's about being intentional. If certain behaviors no longer serve the woman you're becoming, then it's time to let them go, not because someone told you to, but because you know better now. So, while the title may sound bold or even controversial, the deeper message is one of care. Care enough about yourself to look deeper. Care enough to confront hard truths. Care enough to rise above the noise and choose a life rooted in intelligence, grace, and emotional clarity. Because that is the kind of woman who stands the test of time, not just in beauty or attention, but in peace, influence, and legacy. In a world saturated with information, surface-level empowerment, and curated perfection, it becomes easy to forget the power of self-awareness and the necessity of emotional maturity. True elegance, intelligence, and influence are not built on trends or outward appearances. They are cultivated from within. While society often equates intelligence with academic success or career achievements, real intelligence, especially in the context of feminine power, has far more to do with how a woman thinks, responds, grows, and carries herself. Self-awareness is the foundation of all personal transformation. It is the rare ability to observe your own behavior without excuses or ego. A woman who is self-aware does not need others to point out her blind spots. She actively looks for them. She understands that ignorance is not bliss, it's bondage. She sees her habits, her patterns, her emotional reactions, and instead of defending them, she examines them. This inner reflection allows her to evolve with grace. It protects her from repeating harmful cycles and enables her to step into her life with clarity and intentionality. Emotional maturity is just as critical. It is not about suppressing emotions or pretending to be unaffected. Rather, it is about regulating emotions. It's about knowing the difference between reacting and responding. A mature woman does not act on impulse, nor does she let emotions dictate the direction of her life. She understands that power without discipline is chaos. She recognizes that not every situation deserves a response, and not every opinion needs to be expressed. This level of control isn't cold, it's wise. It's a quiet strength that protects her peace and amplifies her presence. Unfortunately, this depth is often overlooked in modern narratives of success or female empowerment. What is loud is celebrated. What is humble is mistaken for weakness. What is flashy is admired, while what is grounded is ignored. Yet, time always tells the truth. The women who thrive in the long run, who earn respect, who build healthy relationships, who live fulfilling lives, are rarely the ones who chase attention or validation. They are the ones who mastered themselves first. They are the women who built from the inside out. To embody true intelligence as a woman, you must be willing to go deeper than appearances or societal applause. You must be willing to unlearn what the world taught you, that your worth is in how you look, who desires you, or what you own. Because none of those things hold weight if you lack character. Charm can open doors, but it's wisdom that keeps them open. Beauty may attract, but integrity is what builds trust, and trust, once lost through immature behavior, is difficult to regain. An intelligent woman is not afraid of evolution. She doesn't fear change, she initiates it. She sees every life challenge not as a personal attack, but as a growth opportunity. When something in her life goes wrong, she doesn't immediately look outward to blame others. She asks herself, what can I learn here? Where did I go blind? How can I grow from this? That level of internal dialogue requires courage. It's far easier to stay in the comfort of victimhood, blaming people, circumstances, or bad luck. But a woman who is growing understands that self-responsibility is a superpower, not because everything is her fault, but because claiming ownership of her mindset is the only path to long-term freedom. Moreover, a truly intelligent woman does not live to prove others wrong. She does not move through life with a chip on her shoulder, trying to outshine or outdo others. That is ego, not empowerment. She is not in competition with anyone. Her only competition is the version of herself that still believes she's unworthy, or that she needs to be loud to be noticed. She outgrows her own limitations, not to impress others, but to align with her highest self. Elegance is often misunderstood as something external, how a woman dresses, how she walks, or how refined she appears, but the real elegance lies in her attitude. It's in how she treats people who cannot benefit her. It's in how she behaves when no one is watching. It's in the tone of her voice, the strength of her boundaries, the clarity of her vision, and none of these traits can be faked for long. They must be cultivated through consistent self-discipline, humility, and emotional intelligence. One of the greatest signs of intelligence is knowing when you're wrong and being willing to change. A foolish woman will defend her mistakes out of pride. A wise woman learns from them without needing an audience. She doesn't fear correction, she welcomes it from the right sources. She doesn't wait for a crisis to improve herself. She invests in herself proactively. That means reading, listening, reflecting, asking questions, and being open to perspectives that challenge her worldview. Not everything she hears will be right, but her openness to examine different views without ego is what sets her apart. A woman who is emotionally intelligent doesn't weaponize her emotions. She doesn't use manipulation, silence, or drama to get her way. She communicates directly with clarity and compassion. She understands the importance of timing and tone. She knows that true connection, whether romantic, professional, or social, requires emotional safety. And you cannot offer that safety to others if you yourself are emotionally erratic, defensive, or impulsive. Self-awareness and emotional maturity are not flashy qualities. They don't go viral. They won't get you applause in the short term. But in the long term, they are what make a woman unforgettable. They are what allow her to navigate life storms without falling apart. They are what allow her to lead others, build trust, attract quality relationships, and live with deep inner peace. That kind of woman may not be the loudest in the room, but her presence is felt. People remember her not because she demanded attention, but because she commanded respect. Ultimately, becoming that kind of woman requires a commitment to depth over distraction. It means being more interested in growth than gossip. It means being willing to face uncomfortable truths instead of hiding behind aesthetics or performance. And above all, it means remembering that the most powerful woman is not the one who controls others, but the one who has mastered herself. So, what does all of this really come down to? It's not about being perfect, always composed, or never making mistakes. It's about being awake, awake to your own patterns, awake to the difference between appearance and substance, awake to the quiet decisions you make every day that shape who you become, in a world that encourages women to be louder, bolder, and constantly on display. It's easy to overlook the quiet power of discipline, depth, and dignity. But the truth is, the strongest women are not the loudest in the room. They are the most aligned. They don't chase attention, they attract respect, not because they scream for it, but because they embody it. These 6 behaviors, competing from insecurity, glorifying chaos, obsessing over materialism, seeking constant validation, playing dumb, and resisting growth, may be normalized, but they are not harmless. Each one chips away at a woman's potential, her peace, and her long-term value, and the most dangerous thing, many women don't even realize they're doing it. That's why this conversation matters, because the truly intelligent woman is not afraid to self-correct. She's not too proud to evolve. She doesn't confuse momentary popularity with lifelong power. She understands that the foundation of an extraordinary life isn't built on attention, likes, or drama. It's built on clarity, emotional control, and a commitment to becoming better, not just appearing better. So if you recognize any of these traits in yourself, don't shrink, don't spiral into shame. Celebrate that awareness because it means you're growing. The goal isn't to pretend you've never been that woman. The goal is to no longer stay that woman. Rise above the noise, be the woman who reflects, who evolves, and who walks through life not just looking high value, but being high value from the inside out, because true power doesn't shout, it speaks with presence. And the world is waiting for more women like that.